The climate on the Breen home planet is quite comfortable. He who studies evil is studied by evil, and nobody touches Captain Sisko's peppers. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
What's up? What's up?
We're going to have a lot of pepper talk today. Today we're doing a review, my name's Ryan T. Husk, of Deep Space Nine Season 7, Episode 20, The Changing Face of Evil. Written by Ira Steven Behr and Hans Beimler, of course, directed by, we just talked about him recently, Michael Vehar. This was April 28th, 1999. Where were you? And of course, it is a Nog episode. Malissa Longo is here.
Hiya! How's it going?
Yay.
Pretty good greeting. All right. So where do you guys want to start? You want to start with peppers? You want to start with the change? I kept calling it changing the face of evil, but it's the changing face. It's very confusing.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was something else too, but it's the changing face of evil, right? Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to start with the peppers, man. Nobody touches my peppers, you know.
Oh my
Don't
gosh.
touch the black man's pepper.
When she lifted up the pepper, and it was
never
a
touch a
super
black
drooper.
man's pepper.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What was that? It looked like an Anaheim pepper, maybe, right?
I don't know what it looked
but
like.
it looked overcooked and not tasty.
And, yeah.
It still looked good
Yeah.
to me, kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe in a jambalaya type way, but I don't know if she was making jambalaya. You don't put peppers in there like that.
I like the way he said, "You don't cook."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't cook? What are you doing?
Actually, maybe we're skipping ahead here, but there was a line that Sisko delivered that I thought was one of his best deliveries I've seen, because it every once in a while somebody says something, a character says something where it almost feels like they're not acting anymore, where it's just like so natural. You're like, I'm actually watching Avery Brooks say this. I don't know who he's saying it to in his mind, but he said this before or something. And that line was, it was when he was fighting with Cassidy in Odo's office, and she was saying, "How would you like it if I called Starfleet, headquarters?" And he goes, "Look, that's not the same thing." And I don't know why, but the way he said it, I'm like, he has said this in his real life before, because the way he said it was so unbelievably natural and charming and fun. I had to watch it like 3 times.
Yeah.
And I had to think if it was the same thing. And it is the same thing.
Well, I think that's what makes the line funny. Yeah, he's like, whoa, that's not the same thing, honey. Let me just, let's move on.
Yeah,
Well, it is the same thing. And it got proven that it was the same thing when Admiral Ross comes in and says, you have to go to the Chakotay's.
Commander Chintakas section.
Chintakas, yeah. Yes. But no, I thought you were talking about a different line in that scene that I liked. I thought Avery gave a great line when he was making up with Cassidy, and he brought the flowers, and he's admitting that he's wrong, and he's like, "Yeah,
smart move."
He's like, I won't do anything, and until you tell me to, unless it's absolutely necessary." Right? And then he tried to squeeze that little extra caveat in there.
Yeah, and you even had the dramatic pause perfect to yourself, by the way.
And I love the extra caveat. I love that he smiled when she's like, she busts him on it really quickly, and he gives a really, I was just trying you real quick. It was a good relationship moment, and there were a lot of really good moments between Cassidy and Sisko in this one. I especially liked when Quark tells Odo, that could be you and Kira and they're arguing about nothing, that important really, but just,
I know, I love that line.
Marriage, it changes everything. That's his his reference, and I thought that was a great moment too in this episode.
I really like that the writers mix that kind of stuff in, because having 9 episodes straight of a giant war or something, kind of like the first 6 episodes of season 6, I think it was like a big arc. You also want those personal stories, you know what I mean? Like the marriage or the relationship fight or the freaking models with Julian and Chief O'Brien building their little toy set.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff is so charming. Yeah, it's adorable, and it raises the stakes for me personally. You know, it makes it seem more like real. Like these are just real people with hopes and dreams and lives. They're not just out there fighting all the time. They want to live their lives and play with toys, get married, buy flowers, or eat flowers if you're Worf. I don't know.
Right. There's more to life than more to the life of a warrior than their time on the battlefield. That the time on the battlefield is just a small part of what makes them a warrior in life. It really.
I mean, it's also indicative and kind of reflective of how we all have to live our lives. Like we turn into the headlines and we hear about nuclear wars and this and that and all these.
Yeah.
We hear about these things, and they're part of our lives, kind of, you know, in a tangent kind of way, but not directly, you know, but indirectly part of our lives in our ecosystem of information and what we see.
Totally.
And we have to kind of compartmentalize that too as well, and still do the ABCs of, you know, eating and showering and going to work and whatever our daily lives are like, you know, being with our loved ones. So I think that's where Deep Space Nine captures a lot of that too. Even though there's this war, even though all of these things are happening in this intergalactic, you know, way, there's still the moments with your wife. There's still the arguments with your girlfriend, or the feeling of loneliness, or the feeling of falling in love, or just regular things that we all deal with. So I think they capture that very well.
Yeah, totally. It's like, even like you were saying, even today, we're like, oh, wait, so you're saying it's absolutely possible and more likely than ever that we might actually get into a nuclear war and all die and burn and
Right.
Well, so what do you want for dinner? I don't know, I guess you still got to figure out. You still got to figure out what's for dinner, right? We still got to go. Oh, we're out of toilet paper. Can you pick that up? I get. We're still going, right?
We're still going. Yeah.
Went to the bathroom. Yeah, it's interesting because in the opening, when they said, when we find out that the Breen have attacked Earth, and then they show, you know, San Francisco in ruins, and Sisko says, I had a lot of friends in those buildings, which brought back 9/11 to me. But this was before 9/11. So how, the writers must have some kind of crystal ball or some sort of thing, because, you know, these nuclear bombs or these 9/11s where catastrophe happens are probably a way of life forever, unfortunately, but we have to keep going.
Yeah, I also had, like, as I'm watching this episode, I felt a little bit, because they mentioned the Alamo, so obviously there's a lot of the Alamo in the undertone of what they write. You know,
it means Ira wrote this episode, no doubt about it. The Alamo's in it.
Right, but I also feel that they are borrowing a little bit of the historical facts from World War II. And in the same way, like Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese kind of unexpectedly, I think they used the Breen to be the Pearl Harbor moment for Earth in this war, in this conflict. And I also think that the pivot or the turn of DeMar going from being a part of them to switching sides is also indicative of Russia's involvement in World War II as well, and how, they were kind of in alignment with the German forces at one point, and then decided to switch course on that and flip the switch. So I think those are some of the things that I'm reminded of when I'm watching these episodes.
Very astute. Malissa, I don't know if you can top that, but I can't.
Well, I wasn't sure I could top
All
it.
I was thinking about was, I was just reminded, I took this history of Russia class in college back in the day, which was fascinating, history of Russia and the USSR. And I remember that, you were kind of bringing me back to that, Cirroc, and how I believe what was the actual downfall of Germany trying to take over Russia there was the giant winter, and just the impossibility of going through that snow and the ice and the cold winter, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that's really interesting, and the Pearl Harbor aspect too. Yeah, totally. This is probably the inspiration for this attack, since it was before 9/11.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I just thought it was kind of eerie how much it paralleled, and how many times I've heard people say since 9/11, I had friends in those buildings.
Yes,
I had friends in those buildings. I had friends in those buildings, and friends, family members, all in those buildings. And I was like, whoa, they took out their crystal ball and wrote the future,
so to speak.
So to speak. Yeah.
Morn pulled out his crystal ball in this episode and figured out when they would be back almost to the hour.
Yes.
I kind of enjoyed that light moment of levity in the beginning.
Yeah.
The little Morn Nam. But then it got right back into business with seriousness, right? So they started with a little bit levity. Hey, welcome back. And then it went right into it's getting real really fast.
Was that the only Nam today? Was Morn at the beginning? I think it was.
That I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you want to say Goldu Cat. He's not exactly looking like Goldu Cat.
Right, because right now he's Angel Tanan, but the DNA is still Goldu Cat.
Yeah.
As Solbor found out, discovered.
Yeah, Solbor. We hardly knew ye. Were we? But before we go on to Solbor, were we done talking about peppers? Because I didn't get. I couldn't help but I changed the subject, but I was actually secretly curious what your favorite peppers are.
I'm old school. I just like bell peppers.
Okay.
Yeah. Simple.
Lisa made a face when you said that. She's like, this guy has no idea.
I'm trying to think of what my favorite peppers are. I don't know. I like spicy stuff, but bell peppers I had to acquire a taste for, so they're not my favorite. I don't dislike them, but I don't really love them either.
Ditto. I like the hot, but I've grown a ton of. Well, I guess we could talk about this on another time. But I've grown a ton of peppers in my backyard, and they are shockingly good when you grow. Like, it's such a difference when you're growing it yourself. Than peppers that I never thought I would even like. You grow them, and they're just sweet and juicy and delicious. Anyway, we'll talk about
Peter
that.
Piper picked the pickled peppers.
That's right.
I really
That's
like the yellow.
Flavor.
The yellow spicy, tart, tangy
banana
ones.
Peppers.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My mom eats the green jalapeno peppers.
Yep, I've grown jalapenos, habaneros, serranos. Yeah, you could grab a serrano pepper, those little, and eat the whole thing. Whew, make your eyes water.
And poblano. I love poblano too.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, Sorry.
No, but I did. I mean, it was a good moment. You know, he came in there. She was trying to do some good stuff. You know, I actually was surprised she took it that well, because if I'm trying to cook you a dinner, I don't care if I can't cook. You're supposed to just kind of be grateful that somebody's trying to cook for you. Yeah, or you got to at least be grateful for the gesture, for the idea. It's like, hey, I seen you've been stressed out lately, and there's got to be some acknowledgement for that. It can't be like, this is garbage. What the hell is going on up in here? If you do all that, I'm gonna be like, wait a minute, it's your birthday. I was trying to cook for you. I'll be like, I know I suck, but goddamn, you can't just go and turn it over the pots and stuff. You got to at least pretend you like it when you take that first bite. Like, good. Yeah, very good.
Thank you. Very good. I never thought that mayonnaise could be so good in a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Very good. Thank you so much.
Isn't that like common courtesy in a relationship? You can't just walk in there and your significant other has got a candle lights going on the table, and you're like, "What the hell do I smell in the kitchen? Is you cooking?
Did you forget to flush?
Are you kidding me? No, Aaron. If I had made a meal like Cassidy, Aaron would have let me know
right away. Huh?
There was also a lid, a pot lid on the floor that was burning on the floor, because when Sisko tried to pick it up, I was like, that was some good slapstick acting there, Captain Sisko. I haven't seen that in some time. So there's a pot lid that's burning on the floor, probably making a hole, and it's going to land in Rom's quarters or something above, from above. So yeah, I mean, it was smoky, but that doesn't mean it couldn't taste delicious. It might, he hasn't tasted it yet. You never know.
Well, some people do like the taste of burnt. So
I don't know. He walked in like if you saw your kid playing with a bunch of kitchen ingredients, and they're like a 6-year-old trying to mess around with flour. Like you walk in the kitchen, like, why are you cracking all these eggs and flours everywhere? That was kind of the way he reacted. Like, she is a grown woman. She might not be the best cook.
Right.
He was really mad about the bell peppers, because he did take 3 months to grow them. So that made a little bit of sense. But other than that, I thought it was kind of a bigger reaction than necessary. Somebody's trying to do something good for you. Because my cousin did this recently, and his now wife, was cooking for him for his birthday, and he got in a big argument. He said, "I already ate."
Just say thanks, dude.
Yeah, just say and she got very upset.
That's not cool.
She got upset, stormed out of the house, and he calls me and he says, "What? Am I tripping?" I'm like, "Yes, you're tripping."
Yeah, go eat.
She's trying to cook you a birthday dinner. She bought you a gift and you don't want to eat, and you complained about the gift. I said, that's kind of your fault, and you better go apologize for that, which he did. But sometimes you're in the wrong with certain things. I can understand him say, "Oh, what are you doing? No, those are bell peppers." Oh, but I cook around here. You don't cook, I cook.
Yeah. And I think I remember him saying something to the effect of, in previous episodes, like, don't mess with my kitchen. This is my
spot.
But I don't remember Cassidy ever giving him anything like that, like saying, "Okay, fine, but then the living room's mine." Right? No.
Well, Jake's figured it out, because you never seen Jake cooking. So Jake already knows. He's already gotten the talk.
He hangs out in his room. And then when he comes out when it smells good, and he goes, "Oh, it smells good. All right, time to eat."
Yeah.
He did get a hand smack once, because he was trying to get into the. Yeah, he's like,
I do the taste testing.
Kitchen. Yeah,
I do taste testing. I don't do cooking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so he's very sensitive about that, but it also shows that there's a lot of things like on people's minds, right? There's so much stress on his mind. He sees it's not really about the cooking; it's more about the stress that is on his mind, and that's what she also recognized is why she tried to do it in the first place. It's just kind of a sign that there's a lot of stuff going on, and everybody's kind of on edge. Sisko's clearly worried about Cassidy. He wants to get her on a 30-day vacation, and he doesn't want her being kind of getting caught up in the middle of some kind of crazy situation. So everybody's concerned about everybody else. And I think that's what really we're trying to highlight more than anything.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, by the way, that for those of you just listening in, the people in my background, I've got Kai Wynn and the star of the show, Gul Dukat and Joel Tanan. And I was thinking, Ducat's got to be the one that cooks in that relationship. I don't think Kai Wynn, I don't even think she ties her own shoes, right? And I could see Ducat being like the nurturing cook type. Oh, Adami, I've prepared your favorite rectigino soup with grilled tar, or whatever he does. And then he slips a little bit of poison or whatever he does in there to get her to forget he's crazy. Yeah.
Well, and that has worked for him to win over a lot of people.
How about when he told Solbor? Exactly. Solbor walks in, he's like, I'll take my breakfast out in the patio in the balcony. Solbor's like, I fucking hate you, man.
Well, it's funny because he went from, in the beginning when we saw him arrive at Kai Wynn's residence, he came and said, a simple farmer like me doesn't deserve to sit at a table and be served. So he came at this really like, I'm a nobody, and I'll eat out of the doggy bowl on the side. Don't worry about me. And now he's like giving orders like, I'll take it on the balcony with a glass of mimosa.
Yeah. And he doesn't even like ask or wait to be asked. He just like,
or even address you face to face.
Right.
He talks as he's walking, like with his back to you, you know, like you're writing you off. He doesn't even address you as a human being.
Wynn does that too. Kai Wynn does that too.
Oh, the most.
She almost does it better than him. Yeah. I don't know if it's better than him because he obviously isn't allowing it, but she is as good at dismissing somebody and making them feel completely irrelevant and stupid for even being around. Like there was a moment where she says to him, like, what are you still doing here? When she said that to
that's what I was going to say, is she still has her moments of checking him. Like Ducat keeps getting bigger than his britches, just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then every once in a while she snaps him back a little bit, but he takes 3 steps forward and she knocks him 1 step back and then 3 more steps forward, interesting dynamic
his is
there.
Definitely his is a calculated game and hers is more reactive and I'm not fearful. Don't tell me I'm scared.
Yep. and then she says to him, why are you still here? And he's like, oh, but and she says, go away. And like
she had a couple good lines,
the way she said it, I was like, oh gosh, that's like she really just made him feel stupid for even being there. Like, go away, like, get out of here.
It's not just in the line, but also her delivery is so good. Like, she's not like, go away. She's like her delivery is like, what do you
like? You haven't figured out that you gotta
what
go
are you,
away?
an idiot?
Like,
go away. Get out of here. Hey, we got to take our break. So we're going to go away in just a second here. And then we'll talk more about how great Kai Wynn is and how obviously Gul Dukat is the star of the show, Deep Space Dukat. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Malissa Longo.
Hiya.
And myself with the Trivioids of the week. Here we go. The Breen are a race of warriors. The Dominion once sang Cardassia's praises. Nobody touches Captain Sisko's peppers, and he means it. Kai Wynn is canceling an appearance with the Vedic Assembly. Julian Bashir is Travis. Bashir gets excited playing with toys. The climate on the Breen home planet is quite comfortable. He who studies evil is studied by evil. And Solbor tried his best.
Mm-hmm. And you meant to say Deep Space Nog, right?
Yeah.
He was there. We got a Nog appearance today. That was pretty fun. Good to see him. It's nice that he's kind of affiliated with the Defiant. So when they go on the Defiant, you're like, okay, where's Nog? He's going to be on the bridge somewhere.
Yeah.
I was happy when I saw him. I get excited every time he comes on and I hear his voice.
Mm-hmm.
But he was worried in this episode, and I was worried when he was worried, because as soon as I saw that he was worried, I was like, uh-oh. He's saying that something bad's going to happen, because Nog's character that they used to kind of foreshadow a lot of things. So when he came on, he's like, I don't feel good about this. And I was like, what's going to happen right now? You know?
Well, yeah. And it was fun that Kira was talking him down. Like, you're always worried. Why are you always worried?
Yeah, and he is. Usually he is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the Red Squad episode, like everybody was dying around him, and he was still able to kind of like have some kind of level temper and not really freak out and panic that much. But this time he was really showing some nerves. And I wonder if it's because this is the first time we've seen him in battle since the recovery from his injury.
Oh, good point. I think you might be right. Yeah.
Huh?
That's very, very good point. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. They didn't really say anything about it, but I think it's the first time we saw him on the Defiant since his leg injury.
Oh my God.
So,
and his last time on the Defiant. Like I had forgotten. Yeah, I had forgotten that we lose the Defiant. Like,
I know, I got choked up.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, Cirroc, did it kind of take you by surprise? Because it's kind of an unceremonious ending. They kind of just go, okay, there's 5 minutes left in the episode. Oh, here's a quick little battle and abandoned ship, and we're expecting, okay, but who's gonna come and save them? What's gonna be the twist? Nope, Sisko just goes, boy, it was a fine ship. I'm sure gonna miss. And then Chief O'Brien's like, come on, let's get your ass out of here. And then we actually see the Defiant explode, and we're like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, WTF, WTF.
Yes.
I just kept writing it down. I was like, are you serious? Abandoned ship? Like, well. So then I was thinking, okay, so abandoned ship. Okay, maybe they're going to abandon the ship. And
it'll be salvaged, right?
And it'll be salvaged. It'll just float in space. The enemies will see that nobody's on it, and they won't fire at it. You know, they'll just let it float around, and eventually Federation will recapture it, and repair it or something like that. But when they showed the bridge of it and the whole hull getting torn off, and I was like, man, we got memories in that thing.
I know. I know. When it blew up, I was like, oh, "You're crying about a ship."
Yeah.
But so much has happened on that ship, but there's so many great moments leading up to the explosion of the Defiant blowing up. Like there is one scene where all you heard was the chatter over the comms from other ships, but nobody else on the bridge said a word. But you could still feel the weight and the intensity of the battle they were about to embark on. And I had to rewind it a couple times because they focused on Sisko, and then they focused on Nog and Kira and Worf and Bashir, and all of their faces said everything that needed to be said without a word of dialogue between them. And it was really powerful. For me, it was really powerful.
Now, of course, the female changeling was the hero of this episode. Because if she had let them get shot down, then pretty much what do you have left? You got Quark and Jake Sisko and Odo. if they shot down all those pods, we'd be like, oh wow. I guess it's the Quark and Jake Sisko show all of a sudden.
But it wasn't out of
kindness.
No, it wasn't out of charity. It was out of, let's put that fear into the people, so that they go back and
yes, yes. So a little bit more about that. Pardon me. What I was noticing more than anything in this episode was the art. Like when the Defiant blows up and the camera kind of pans out and we see this absolutely gutted Romulan bird of prey, or Romulan warbird, I should say. And it's like, it's gutted, it's on fire, and this stuff just looks so good. Mm-hmm. It's like I don't know, like I just really like it when that kind of stuff is done well. It tells its own story where you see the magnitude of this, because these warbirds are like 3 times the size of the Enterprise D. These things are gigantic, and like 50 times the size of the Defiant, or 100 times, or whatever. But especially, this is kind of like a thing that I've just always liked when watching Star Trek. And it's seeing like what's behind Malissa in a way, when they're setting up, an establishing shot of a different planet. Now we're on Cardassia, and here's the Cardassian cityscape. Or now we're on Bajor, and here is the Bajoran landscape. And I've always loved that, because that's really the only imagery we see of these foreign planets. But it tells so much. Like the Cardassian planet has these buildings with like hooks on them, like these crazy hooks. And the Bajoran is more peaceful and lush with lakes, and then the Vulcan is like desert. And I feel like this stuff really stood out in this episode because they did it so many more times. We saw it like these establishing shot like 5 times. So I was just looking up who these people are to give them their props. Obviously, John Eves was the senior illustrator. Heard his name 1,000 times, but also Denise and Michael Okuda were scenic artist and scenic art supervisor, respectively. There was also David Galvin was the standby painter. I'm not 100% sure what that means. Adolfo Castanon was the greensman, so he's bringing in the stuff for when they're actually on the planet. Anyway, I just wanted to give a shout out to those guys because I love that stuff. I'll pause it and just like stare at every little building and all the little details, and then they make the lakes kind of shimmer and post or whatever. It's great stuff. I love it.
Well, I read that the outside of it's right here. The outside of Kai Wynn's living area is kind of reminiscent to the St. Nicholas's Church in Prague.
I've been there.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Prague is like probably the most amazing place I've ever seen. I'm trying to remember being up there in that church.
That's been a bucket list of mine since I was...
Unbelievable. That's the most amazing place ever. Cirroc can probably top it because he's been to way more places on convention circuits.
No, I haven't been to Prague. I actually was going to go, and I didn't get a chance to. I also want to go to Budapest and check it out there. I heard it's beautiful there as well. So
you hear the way he said, check it out, after we were talking about Prague?
But yeah, I thought of the things. When I saw the scene, I was thinking of what kind of weaponry hit the Defiant. I was like, if we're up against those kind of weapons, it's going to be a long fight.
Exactly.
Because it was able to shut down the entire, essentially all the power systems and all the emergency backup. So it left the Defiant.
It was new.
Yeah, it was pretty helpless. So that was a big concern of mine. I like Martok foreshadowing when he said every species has its weakness. And I think he was doing a little foreshadowing there. They hinted on the Breen's temperature. I don't know if that's going to eventually play an issue, but it seemed to me like that would be one of the things to kind of go into if you're going to be looking for weaknesses.
Well, one of the...
Also,
I was just going to say,
one for Jemadar.
Yeah, one of the certainly one of the weaknesses for the Breen that we know ahead of time is sit-ups, because those guys look like they're out of shape even through that outfit of theirs. So we know how to.
The hair.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking also when the Breen, when Damar was doing the scene with the Breen where he was telling him, "I wouldn't trust Wei Yun if I were you," and he was trying to plant some seeds of doubt. obviously the brain are communicating with that electronic sound, and you don't know what they're saying. So I wondered if there were lines being delivered to him off camera that he was reacting to, or if he was just literally talking to a person just going near, with no sound at all. Either way,
lines from the AD, right? That's usually how they might do it.
That's what I would guess.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I would love to see? I would love to see a moment where DeMar then leaves, and then the Breen commander's there, and he walks over to his lieutenant, and then they have a heart-to-heart. And for like 5 minutes, we have to watch them having a heart-to-heart. And it just doesn't. We don't. Like the other one's like, and then you kind of lift up a hand, because even the closed captioning, I watched with the closed captioning to get all the planets and names. It just says indistinct chatter, and they just have a heart, and then they both sit down, and then and then afterwards they shake hands and they like hug, and we're like, what? What happened?
Or maybe he's in his quarters listening to some Breen music, and it's just all of that sound.
Radio static.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I was wondering about that scene, just about how you do that scene with somebody who's not communicating back to you. I thought that was pretty good acting on Casey's part. Actually, Casey had really good performances, and Wei Yun both had very good moments. I loved when Wei Yun kind of had that moment with DeMar, and he looks at him and he's like, "There's something different about you, There's just
like you're half naked or something like that."
At first, he takes a dig at him. He says, "You don't have a bottle in your hand." That was like a slight more than it was a compliment. In the way he delivered it. But then he follows it up, because he's so arrogant in his own way, where he's got everything figured out, because DeMar obviously feels like he's giving away the fact that he's no longer in alliance with them, which is great writing, obviously, by the guys. That kind of tension where he's like, "Oh, really? I don't look the same," And then, of course, Wei Yun in his own arrogance flips it and says, "Yeah, because we're winning, you never thought we would win," and all of this stuff. But I loved when he says to him, "You regained your confidence," And DeMar looks at him and says, "You know me so well." And he does that little smug, like, "You idiot," You're too arrogant for your own good,
Right? That's the downfall. But I thought Wei Yun, Jeffrey Combs playing Wei Yun, did one of the best moments of acting I've ever seen on Deep Space Nine. This unbelievable moment at the end. First of all, his whole slithering and slimy stuff that he does with DeMar is always like shockingly amazing, like A+. But when the female changeling and Wei Yun, they see DeMar turning around on them and doing his announcement, and there's this beautifully directed, tense moment. Like that scene, shout out to Michael Vehar, felt so tense with the music and the acting and everything. And there's not much that needs to be said. It was just like the female changeling just says, "I want you to find DeMar and kill him," or whatever it is. But then Wei Yun looks like he's just possessed with rage and panic too, desperation. Like there's fear.
Yeah.
There is
fear. That you've never seen him express as Wei Yun before.
Right.
His anger and intensity is coming out because the base emotion he is feeling is utter fear. He's petrified. And so he's just like, I don't care how many Cardassians you have to kill. He's not even looking the Breen straight in the eye. Like I'm watching him, he's looking off in the distance, and then he only looks at him when he says, "Is that clear?" It was an acting clinic right there.
This is what I am going to also double down on what you said, but I want to add to that. The moment that I registered from that performance is right before that he says, "I could be the last."
Yes. Yeah, that's where I got
and
it.
He's
too.
realizing his own mortality. Like his own mortality just set in. Before he was like, he basically lives forever, right? He's like, "You can kill me if you want to. I'll be back tomorrow. And I'll be downloaded with the same information. I'll know everything that just happened all before. And there's no gain or loss for me. I don't care." Right. There's no consequences.
Right.
But when he was faced with the mortality, his own mortality, you could see it like all set in like, wait a minute, if I die, I'm dead. And I thought there was a lot in that moment. And I also, that made me realize also at that same moment that Wei Yun is kind of like a Trill in the fact
I was
that
thinking
he
that just
gets
now
his
when you were
past
saying it.
lives. Yeah, he gets his past lives, right? So he still has access to the past Wei Yun 7, 6, and 5 and all the ones before. So he's kind of like a Trill in that he keeps getting a new host that looks exactly like the old host, but he's essentially keeps getting his memories downloaded, and he can potentially live indefinitely, I guess, you know? So his mortality kind of setting in that moment where he realizes I could be the last Wei Yun, I thought was like you were saying, just like brilliant A+ performance, because he registered all of that in that moment. And you could see the fury and the desperation kind of starting to set in, like, okay, I'm in survival mode now. I gotta like this. We have to do whatever we have to do, you know.
And that's what the greats do as an actor. Like, he could have yelled, he could have raised his voice, he could have slammed his fist so that he could say, hey, look, this is me acting angry, this is me showing anger. But he didn't even need to do a thing. It was all in his voice and in his eyes, facial, like the quiver in his voice and his eyes. And just like, I'm sitting here just like looking at his eyes being like, how does one man know how to act so freaking well? It's just not fair. And I'm very angry about it.
Another person who I think gave a very good performance in this episode, we finally got to hear more from, except for just his reactionary looks, was Solbor.
Yeah.
And you know, first of all, just Ira and Hans calling him Solbor, a guy who's essentially burying his soul.
Very good. I thought you meant because he was boring.
Yeah.
No, yours is much better.
Yeah, so he kind of bore his soul in this episode. He reveals what he feels about things. We didn't know how he felt, and he would just be the quiet guy who would accept whatever is going along and just, you know, say whatever you need, I'll do it. But at this point, he actually, you know, bore his soul and said, "This is what you're doing is wrong. You're here for the Pa Wraiths. You're sacrilegious essentially to what we believe in, and I'm going to tell on you." You know, which is not the smartest thing to say to somebody with a knife in their hand, by the way. If you're that, you know.
Yeah, I don't think he really expected the Kai to murder him, especially since they had been together for how many years, and
yeah,
I was
but
like,
either way, when somebody got a knife out, even if they're just cooking in the kitchen, you don't just like, you know, you kind of back away a little bit. You don't just, you know, turn around.
Why, that backstabbing bitch.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
But you're right. He actually got a monologue. Before he was just like, yes, my eminence. Yes. Oh, no, he's here to see you. You know,
and he stood up to Ducat.
Yeah. And he would have to show his character just in his mannerisms. But in this episode, we got to know Solbor.
Yeah. That he is a true faithful to the prophets, not Kai Wynn. Not
Yeah, and he actually gives one of the lines that I thought was interesting as well, because I had to look it up. I didn't know where it came from, but he said that he who studies evil is studied by evil.
I was looking that up too.
It's very good.
Like, that's
like when they say if you talk about ghosts a lot or spirits or whatever, you're attracting ghosts and spirits.
Really?
When you do that, theoretically. But anyway, that's like if you're studying, for example, you know, people that are like playing with a Ouija board or something, if they're studying what's on the other side of that Ouija board, then theoretically what's on the other side of that Ouija board is also studying them, right?
Yeah. So the phrase is a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah.
Nietzsche. And it's from his book Beyond Good and Evil, Prelude to a Philosophy of the Future.
Wow.
Just another kind of little gem that the writers give us about how much their knowledge is and how well read they are, and where they pull things from in their own life and story writing. They don't just give you, a plain Jane story. They layer it with so much contextual stuff. They're pulling out quotes from here. They're pulling out Alamo references. They're pulling out so much different material, World War II, and then all of these things. And they're pulling out so much stuff. And I think, even with religion and all of these things, it's just so much that they're kind of putting together. And I think it's a testament to good writing being layered and contextualized and having several, multiple reference points where you can identify and back check something and fact check something and, kind of indulge in your own rabbit hole searching for whatever truths that you're looking for. And I think that's what makes some of this writing so interesting to watch and captivating.
Well, and I like that they kind of weave the religion into with politics. And I heard somebody said that they didn't like that so much, but to me, it speaks more to real life and how all of these different subjects, seemingly different subjects, are kind of woven into a larger tapestry of what life is built upon. All of these things are all connected together, and why not discover, not discover, but
Picard.
investigate. Investigate or explore how and why these things are often our downfall, but also give us things to fight for in the same breath. So, yeah, it's a very intelligent show in the way that they tell these stories, because it's so true to life. And yeah.
It's like you were saying, Cirroc, it shows how well read they are in every episode. They don't have to beat us over the head with it, but it's very clear that, they've studied up on things, whether it's the Alamo or whether it's philosophers or whether it's just history. But clearly, we're being told stories from people that have read many stories, and it's really cool. Yeah. And a bunch of stuff probably that they've quoted and referenced that have gone over our heads too, to boot, like just assuming. Yeah.
But it also lends credence to their own kind of mythology that they're creating in the world of Star Trek, right? So it's like you pay homage to these other things, and then you also weave in the new stuff that you're introducing conceptually with the science fiction kind of idea. And so I think it's just a beautiful tapestry as far as the writing is concerned. I wanted to say that also DeMar surprised me a little bit. I have to say I was surprised from where I saw him when he was killing Zial, and when his ambition to rise up in the ranks of the Cardassian Empire. He has, like all the characters really in Deep Space Nine, they surprise you, right? Like Nog surprised me that he was able to become what he became from where he started. And I was surprised by the ambition and by his goodwill and his fortitude and, by his desire to become, what he became. And it was a surprise, that he had to go through all that adversity. And it was a surprise to see a lot of the changes in these characters, including Odo, who, found the human side of himself when he was really, very emotionless in the beginning. So there's been this journey of everybody. Quark, another person that has really surprised me throughout watching the show. And, I expect him to be one way, and he overachieves and exceeds my expectations by doing something selfless or doing the right thing in the moments that count.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, DeMar has to get his credit as well, because for whatever reason, whether it's just his hate for Weyoun or his, desire to liberate his people, I'm not sure exactly what the reason. I couldn't put it on one particular thing per se, but I would say that in the end of the day, the speech that he gave when he talks about, I call upon the Cardassians everywhere to resist, there was a certain, it hurts a nerve inside of you when you hear it, of like, wow, okay, this is finally, he's actually, he's realizing, some kind of the gravity of what's happening, and he's made a decision on what side of right or wrong he wants to be on, and it's pretty, the magnitude of it is going to be impactful.
Right. So we've got to run over to our free-for-all up next, but I bet there's a lot more to talk about. So everybody stick around for that. Before we go to that, we do want to give a very special thanks to Leggett DeMar first and foremost, but then also, right barely below that, Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, Carmen, a.k.a. Skillet, Timothy Baum, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, of course, Bill Victor Arucan. I like that because it always gives me a second to catch my breath. Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, John Mann, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anna Post, Rex A. Wood, Anil O. Palat, Erica Strom, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neil Akasaka, Justine Norton Kurtzen, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, Radek Orszewski out in Southwest Poland, everybody knows, Henry Unger, live from Tokyo, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner. Stick around. We've got the free-for-all. We've got so much more. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We've got Malissa Longo still here, of course.
Hello. How's it going?
And also joining us, we've got live from Tokyo, I bet. Carrie Schwent is here celebrating all things peppers. Looks like Serrano's, actually. Anil O. Palat is here with Deep Space Nine, of course. Eve England is out in Wales. It's very late for her. Goldu Scott Jensen is here, hanging out on the East Coast. Tierney C. Dieckmann is also on the East Coast. They were talking East Coast talk, but we got lost. Neil Akasaka is hanging out. Welcome back. We've got Faith Howell also representing Deep Space Nine. Dr. Mohamed Noor is here representing the color blue. I think it's like
blue.
Navy blue or something.
Duke blue.
And Dr. Susan V. Gruner is here.
Woo. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
You did it.
Yep.
I had to reboot my computer.
It worked.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about this episode. We had so much to talk about. I don't even know if we covered half of it because it's so much fun. Live from Tokyo, what do you think about this episode? Unmute. You got to unmute yourself, though. Otherwise, we're all just waiting with bated breath. Oh, no, we still can't.
Unmute myself.
There we go.
It starts out with lots of respect. Worf says the Dominion's treating the Cardassians, a proud people, as second-class citizens. Martok echoes it with, he talks about the bold attack on the Starfleet headquarters. Even my people never attempted that. I love that. You know, the Cardassians, I didn't like that they were treated or thought of poorly. I like the way they're thought of with those two statements a lot. I thought that was particularly good. As a Bay Area kid, though, when Kira comes in and says they've got a priority one transmission that from Starfleet Command that the Breen have attacked Earth, kills me because it's not Earth, it's San Francisco. It's the Bay Area for me.
It's our home.
The other side of that is that I feel a great deal of pride whenever I see scenes happening there. I'm like, yes, that's where I'm from. So that was cool. I like that. Just a note on the evolution of Nog in this. I think now watching him on the ship when they get ready to go and fight, I love that he's not only part of this, but his emotions about war and being aligned with and accepted by the others on the team. It seems so perfectly natural. Contrast that to the previous perceptions of the Ferengi being self-serving. It's a special character. Kudos to Aaron for bringing that to life. I really, really liked the way that played out in this episode. Historically, there was a cool Damar's declaration of rebellion. He says, "Our allies have conquered us without firing a single shot."
Yeah,
I thought that was cool. It's not there's an oft misquoted statement by Khrushchev in '56 when he talks about conquering America without firing a single shot. But this is actually, I think, a reference to Margaret Thatcher, who in '91 talked about Reagan. She said that the Cold War was won by one man, Ronald Wilson Reagan, and that victory came without a single shot being fired. So 8 years before the episode aired, I think that was what this was a reference to. I liked that. So just a very cool episode with some great historical kind of. It's a war episode, and it's, you can look at it from being negative and the shit being blown up and blah blah blah. But this was just a really cool episode from a historical sort of structured war episode perspective, I thought. So anyway, that's all I've got for you today.
Speaking of cool episodes, we forgot to do Cirroc Lofton guesses the IMDb score of this cool episode.
I'm going to revise. My normal score would be 8 or higher, but since the last one didn't do so, I'm going to say this is be like a 7.8 is where my number is going to go at. I'm hoping that it's somewhere near around there.
God, Eve looks pissed. Anybody else have any guesses?
I like Cirroc's guess.
Yeah.
I think Cirroc's probably right, but I want to go a little higher. I want to say around 8.1, just because it is so good, and people love when stuff gets blown up. So
even if it's the Defiant,
there was a lot of it. There was a lot. It wasn't just the Defiant. I mean, look at Melissa's background.
Mm-hmm, right. Neil Akasaka, you look like you've got a guess.
Man, I want to say I'm going to go with 8.3. Maybe I might be going a bit high, but I feel like this one would have been well received. So yeah, I'm just going to go with that.
Neil, you go as high as you want because it is an 8.3.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
is it?
You follow your heart.
Oh, yeah.
Really? Wow. Okay, that usually doesn't happen, but okay, wonderful.
You get the Tierney Award of the day.
Hooray!
All right, Mr. Goldu Scott Jensen, how are you, and how do you feel about this episode?
I felt pretty good about it. I felt like there was a lot of great quotable moments in it. It just keeps happening over and over again. I'm sure you guys talked about the pepper scene, but that
first,
nobody touches my peppers.
Nobody touches my peppers. They were decimated too. I don't know how you could think that they were still you could salvage any of that. And he picks them up, and they just look like shoe leather. But I love how they once again showed between Ben and Cassidy in that scene the balance that they have in their relationship, because it starts out with him and they're just livid about these peppers, and then by the end of it, with the line is he's talking about going out on the run, and he's, "Oh, you can't do it," and she's like, "I'm not asking you if I could do it." And she's, "Can I talk you out of it?" And it's like, absolutely not a chance. That they have that balance like that, and it's not just one person ever overpowering the other. And I think that Cassidy Yates is probably the only person in the galaxy that could fulfill that role perfectly with Ben Sisko. But and another scene that I really, really liked was when Ezri and Worf were in Quarks, and they were looking down at Julian and Miles being silly, and they were just going back and forth, and Worf is like, "This he's an idiot, he's a kid, he's playing with toys, he's doing this and that." And how Ezri at one point actually had to write this down. She goes, "Do you think I should tell him how I feel?" And Worf goes, "Is it going to make you happy?" And she says, "Yeah." And he goes, "Then you should." And Worf just played and more of an adult role than I feel like he normally does, and he doesn't just like scream out and act the fool like even further, where he actually let go and he supported, Dax, who is also his friend, even more so than any kind of past that they had together. But yeah, I really did like that. It does show balance in that perspective too, with the two of them. Now, whatever was going on with Kaiwin and Gul Dukat, I don't know what kind of balance there. That
steamy.
So creepy and great. Love all that. I'm loving this whole creepy. I'm like in Bajoran disguise like way more this time through than I ever have. Because God, he just turns up that creepiness so much. Like you were scary when you were Gul Dukat, and now you're just absolutely unnerving. But yeah, I think it got a good rating.
Mm-hmm.
I was waiting to see.
Would you say, Cirroc?
No, I was going to say I was waiting to see Kai and Dukat making that clay thing that they did in the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze.
No spoilers. Next episode. Nobody tell them it's coming. They make a Bajoran pot.
Yeah,
or
like
spring pot. Yeah, spring pot.
Plays with toys.
Or walking in like, oh no, God, no. Sorry, I'll
Righteous
be back.
Brothers playing.
Yeah,
I'll come back
Every
later.
single time I walk in here.
Every time I walk in, oh no, I'll be back. I'll be back, guy.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, somebody who's no stranger to making pottery with a Klingon, Eve England, is also here. How are you, Eve? And feel free to share any clay making advice or tell us how you feel about this episode. Anybody just listening in, she's wearing a Defiant shirt, RIP, Defiant earrings. She's got a Defiant mug and personality. She is Eve England representing the Defiant.
Yeah, I mean, this is just such a good episode, and I just think it's got one of the best endings of any episode that we've ever seen. But I probably leave that to Faith to talk more about Damar generally. I put something on Instagram earlier that just absolutely cracked me up with this episode, and I'm going to have a talk about some of this part of the episode in terms of O'Brien and Julian's model making of the Alamo. Because I was watching this episode earlier today with James, and he was painting and constructing some of his Warhammer models, and he was completely totally taken aback by the comments and the mocking of whether they're toys or not, and acting like a child. So that was just absolutely hilarious. And it was just perfect timing. But I just thought when I was looking at just thinking about when they were in that scene and they had that big model there and they're just talking about, and Julian's like, I just want to win. And I thought this is a really good way of maybe showing how Bashir and O'Brien kind of see themselves in this Dominion War, that they just see that it's almost an impossible fight. Are they actually, is it a no-win situation for them and they just want to win? And I just thought it was just a really interesting way of portraying some of their emotions, but without them talking about the war itself, but, just talking a bit through their holosuite game. So I thought that was a really good way of presenting that in a sort of more subtle way. But yeah, just so many great things. I just love this episode and absolutely couldn't believe how horrible Kaiwin still is. I know I talked about it last week about how she's the worst villain ever, but even when she knew it was Dukat, her, all-time enemy, because he could sort of dispose of the body and she would, be sort of have a bit of a cover for what had happened, she was happy to just crack on. And I was just like, she is just despicable. And I just loved that. So that's brilliant.
Because Dukat is so charming.
Clearly.
Well, Anil Palat, I'm going to guess you have painted a model before. Am I right? And how do you feel about this episode?
I'm trying to think. Have I? Maybe like a long time ago. I was really into models. Yeah. So, all right. Maybe. Pretty accurate.
Maybe then.
Yeah, I don't want to steal Damar talk, but I find it just fascinating how he went from a guy in the background in an episode like season 3 or so, and now he's completely this integral part of the plot. And it's just awesome. It makes rewatches so much more fun because you're like, oh, I know where this is going to go. And then you catch little things and you can kind of see the writers going, this will be interesting. This will be fun. So I really like his arc and his evolution, because he was so hated, and now I feel like as an audience member we're kind of on his side, even though he killed Zial. He's like, we hated him, and now we've done this flip. So yeah, I just love watching that and contrasting that with everybody he's around, which is, Wei Yun, who's just as like slimy as ever, and the female changeling who is as scary and evil and just terrifying. Like when she's in the room, I just am like, you get uncomfortable because she's just so in a corner and dangerous. And so it's great to see everybody getting pushed to their extremes and to see where they go. And I feel like some people are going way to the dark side and some people are going to the light side. So it's fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. You know who else is fun to watch, you guys? Carrie Schwent. How are you, Carrie? She's got peppers in her background teasing us all.
I pick a theme and I stick with it as hard as I can. And yeah, I've got several things. I'll start off with the haiku, which leads me to a couple things. So I've got the Breen attack Earth. No one touches my peppers. Defiant destroyed. And the Defiant destroyed leads me to a goof that IMDb found, and I went back and looked at it a little closer. At minute 42 after the Defiant's destroyed, and there's a slow pan of the founder, and then you get to Wei Yun. And if you look about halfway down his chest, you can see where the makeup stops and the rest of his chest starts. There's like a visible line. And when he eventually turns around, you don't see it anymore, because I think the shirt is up higher by that point.
On who is this?
Wei Yun.
Oh, didn't notice that.
Yeah, you see like the pale makeup, and then a visible line right about here, about halfway down his chest, right around his collarbone. And as far as the Defiant goes, which actually leads me to a question, and if this has been asked before, I will have slept since then, but if all of the members of the senior staff are on the Defiant, who's in charge of the station when they leave?
Odo.
Okay.
Shift.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if Odo was there or not.
But Kira would have been good to stay on the planet too, because on the
station,
right? Yeah.
I was told Jake, so I'm just going to go off of what I heard.
Yeah,
Jake definitely did the whole thing. Yeah.
Probably right.
And yeah,
that's what I heard.
Actually, is a good segue to the thing I put in the chat, the boys and their toys, and everybody having all kinds of fun with the model. Oh, you lost Travis! How dare you? You lost Travis! And Worf going, well, if they want to win the battle, they need to do this. And then Ezra saying, okay, do you want to go down and play? Because you have Thomas go down and play. Right. And then they're talking about him losing Travis on the Defiant, and Kira's like, well, that's what you get when you let someone else play with your toys. They're gonna get lost. We'll just make
Brian was so offended,
but that's not the point. Just way too much fun with that. Oh, where did I? Yeah, I got that. Yeah, the Sisko versus Cassidy thing. She was absolutely within her rights to be as pissed as she was with what Sisko pulled, and I'm not entirely sure him fixing it. The flowers, even the necklace, I don't think would have been enough, because that made her look ridiculous with all the people that she has to work with when he's not around. And she had a fantastic point of, well, I can't go to Admiral Ross and say, well, I don't want him doing this, make him stay home. And I'm absolutely on her side on that particular debate.
Yeah, she won that argument. I think.
Yeah,
I think even Sisko realized that.
Yeah. Yeah, he knew it, and he's yep. Oh, there's a necklace. Yeah, in case the flowers.
Which he did. He did the thing that any smart man should do, is realize that he's wrong and apologize, get it over with.
Exactly.
You don't even have to realize you're wrong for that to be a smart move.
Just heard my husband just heard me say that. And I could hear him from the other side of the door saying, "Yes, dear." Yeah, he heard me say that. Decided to chime in.
Yes.
All right. Very good stuff. Well, somebody who's never said "yes, dear" ever, Dr. Mohamed Noor, is also here.
I did not think I was going to be next with that intro.
I know the face you made.
I know.
How are you? What do you think of this?
I'm great, thanks. I had three thoughts. One, which is interesting, just for not just this episode, but the last several episodes. We've often in the past talked about an A plot and a B plot, but now that's kind of like, now there's A, B, C, D. There's like a whole bunch of things going on all over the place, which is actually, it's a nice change. I like it, but you can do that because of this arc-based format, because you have more time and not just the 42 minutes or whatever to work with. So I really felt that with this episode more than a lot of the others.
That's a good point. Mohamed, real quick, do you think that since they have like 7 or 8 different plot points, like episode to episode, the one, like the C plot then becomes the A plot, and then last week's A plot is now a D plot? Do you think it kind of rotates around?
I think a little bit. I mean, obviously the Dominion War is high, but flip side is like, we're looking at Dominion War, but there's pieces to it. There's what's going on Deep Space Nine. There's what's going on in Cardassia. So they kind of blur into each other a little bit. So I like that aspect to it. I had 2 other thoughts. One of them, in terms of the theme for this episode, I thought was more increasing boldness and actualization. I mean, we saw this, like, for example, with Dukat just killing Sobor, hitting Sobor just so openly and not seeming to worry about any consequence coming from that later. And similarly with Damar, when he was talking to the Breen, like, I wouldn't trust those Breen, but it was just like, I wouldn't trust Wayun, and you might be next. Again, it seems like the fear of getting caught and getting in trouble is kind of moving into the background more. So I thought that was an interesting development overall, just across multiple of the plots. And the last thing was you remember at the very end when there was that announcement from Damar, there were a bunch of Cardassians standing in the background, and they were just working away. They didn't seem to be particularly reacting. Nobody was particularly reacting to them. And the thing that struck me is, like, you could tell this was filmed pre 9/11, because I can tell you from experience, post 9/11, like, I couldn't get anywhere near an airport without people, like, all over me. So it was interesting. There wasn't any broader stereotyping, even while the leader of this group, the Cardassian, is like, rise and resist. And, they're just working away and everybody's just letting them work. So that was interesting.
Just chilling. Good stuff. Cirroc, I know you thought of Draymond Green when Gul Dukat punched Solbar, right? Just me?
No, I thought of Neil Akasaka because he got Akasaka in the face.
Oh!
Wow.
Well, I think you got to respond to that, Neil. What do you think of this episode?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I did not see that intro coming either. There are so many quotable moments in this one. I have to throw out, I could be the last Wayun. Like,
yes.
Like that just made me chuckle. It makes me laugh every time.
That sounds like a title for something too. The Last Wayun.
The Last. Yeah. I actually just rewatched this episode, a few days ago, just to like refresh my memory, because it's been a while, since my last rewatch of everything. And I mean, it'll probably echo a lot of what people have said here, but I love the dynamics between Ben Sisko and Cassidy Yates. That scene, their scenes are like, some of my favorites there. And was it this one too, where Odo and Quark were like watching, Sisko and Cassidy, like just, and then was it Quark that commented like, that's what happens, or that could be you, with Kira or something. I think that was this episode. Yeah. And there's a lot of, obviously a lot happened in this episode, a lot of serious things and such, but there's a lot, I just love how even in the middle of it, there's all of these moments that are just peppered throughout it that just like, bring smiles. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. That is a new verb that Cirroc created. Akasakt in the face.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to steal that.
Somebody who apparently may or may not be into fan fiction, Faith Howell, is also here. What's up, Faith? How are you?
Well, I did see that one coming. Yeah, so of course, I'm going to talk about Damar. He's the best. But I did watch the interview this morning, and I remember commenting about how he just started glowing in the last episode, and Casey pointed out that was the point where he had to stop, or got to stop drinking the syrupy mess all the time.
Syrup.
And so I wonder if that had to do with the glow. Now he's not like dredging into work going, I have to drink this crap again. He's like, yes, I win.
Yeah.
So it was a good moment too, where he takes the drink out of his guy's hand too, right? Mm-hmm. I think there was like a small moment where he's like, we're not celebrating this victory. And he kind of takes the drink out of his hand. And I thought, oh, wow, the guy who used to drink all the time is now taking drinks out of other people's hands. So he's grown in that way too.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved, I know Dr. Noor mentioned it a little bit, but how he started kind of putting little seeds of doubt in the Breen's minds and trying to stir up a little bit of trouble there. And I feel like that's just the office environment that they live in, because that's been there. I mean, even back to in the Pale Moonlight, when they were creating that fake holodeck program to fool the Romulans, that was what made it seem real, was the arguing, the bickering between them. And so that's got to still be there. And, we still see it between Damar and Weyoun, but even when it's not just them in the office, that's still going to be part of that dynamic. So the Breen have got to be aware of that and exposed to that. And so it doesn't seem like it would be that out of character for him to say something like that and them just kind of go, oh, well, obviously he's just losing. So whatever. So, I mean, and then that brings me to I don't want to call it a nitpick, but like, I just keep getting stuck on, and maybe I've said it before, so I apologize if I brought this up in another episode. But the Breen, we've seen as far back as, like Purgatory Shadow, when they're in the internment camp. And we've had one, like that Breen was even sort of on our side at that point in the story, but we don't know what they look like. And we've had Kira and Ducat have been in Breen suits. So obviously they had to have seen a face, right? When they stole the suit off the body, but we didn't. And we know nothing about them. And I'm just amazed. And I'm glad, I guess, that we don't know that much about them, because it makes them that much more sinister in a way that they probably wouldn't be if we did know a lot about them, the same way that the Klingons were a little scarier in TOS than they are now. They're big old soft teddy bears now with, sharp knives. But so I kind of fight back and forth with that, as I understand why we don't know more about them, because it would kill the story. But how have we been with them this long and we don't know what they look like? We don't know what their homeworld is like. And so much so that they're talking about it in the episodes. And then one last thing, I loved Odo's reaction when he's talking to Quark, and Quark goes, that could be you and Kira talking about them getting married. And he just kind of looks like, and I can't decide if that look was, no, we would never, or if that look is, oh, marriage, gross. So, well, time will tell, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of sowing the seeds, the original writer of the hit song "Sowing the Seeds of Love," Tierney C. Dieckmann, is here. You guys don't like that song?
Cool. I love that song.
Okay,
Tears for Fears.
You got it. Nailed it. That was Tierney.
Good job, Tierney.
How are you, Tierney? How do you feel about this episode? And what was your inspiration on that song, by the way?
It's all you, Ryan. It's all you. This episode, this whole arc. I know I haven't been around for the recordings as this arc has started. I haven't been able to, but coming into this one for more analysis, it didn't punch as hard through the rewatch until I started really thinking about it more, and the strong hits of the plot point with we lose the Defiant, the Cardassians rising up, et cetera, et cetera. We know what happened in this episode if you're watching this. But there are a lot of power shifts or punches up in power to move the plot forward. I mean, that's what a lot of these kind of almost segue episodes through this arc are to get to the end. I admittedly, and it's partially I think because we're in the 7th season, it's hard, the ending is coming, especially when you've seen it so many times. Sometimes to enjoy it, it's like you know what's coming, you kind of already got that down slope of excitement, and it feels a little rushed sometimes, but this is better as a segue when you think about it and take all those little beats, those little shifts that maybe to others are a little bit more powerful because they haven't watched through DS9 20, 30 times at this point, restart the series after they finished it, as background noise again and again and again. So these things are desensitized. But really looking at it, especially with, yes, how friggin' despicable Wynn really is. Again, after like what Yvette said, I think it was Eve, I'm sorry, I've already forgotten who it was, that she knows now who Dukat is. And there's a little part of me that thinks she might have actually known since the beginning. Ooh. I mean, the Bajorans have heard this man speak, and
right.
How many times since the occupation, especially her and her position, like she doesn't know what this man's voice and inflections sound like. There's got to be something there, especially once she learns that it's the Pa Wraiths. Like there's at least intelligence reports that she's come across in her position on Bajor. You think that there's something there, but I mean that's never touched on. That's just surmising, making up lore. But between her really showing her colors, and then there's a moment if you watch with Dukat, and really Mark Alamo, without the makeup, he's ultra creepy, and he comes in, he's smacked Solbor, and he's bringing the texts back in. He sets him down, and Wynn is sleeping, and you can see him like visibly clear his emotions to put the act back on, and he just this look of disgust for these people that he despises, but he has to get to his ultimate goal of just he can taste the hate in his mouth, and then he puts on a smile. Wake up, my love, and it like ugh. It just gets to you, and then just other big moments of power seems to be a theme through this. The female changeling, just we're just going to decimate all the Cardassians for rising up against us. The power coming from Damar with his incredible character arc. He's got to be one of my favorites of what's this? A character who can actually learn from their mistakes and change their minds for the better? And his life going on isn't going to be easy, but he does what he knows is right. He takes those chances knowing what it's going to do, what it could cost him and his people, but it has to be done. and even Ben and Cassidy, and their dynamic there is more just two powerful, independent people that know what they have to do. And then, of course, the Breen weapon, which, though it sends shockwaves of lightning throughout the Defiant, I kind of like that it didn't go for the trope that all the consoles are filled with dynamite and fireworks and everyone goes flying. Like, why is there not just an automatic thing in Starfleet of, if things start sparking, hands up, don't touch. Like, they're always going to blow up and go through you. Somebody always gets blown up and tossed out of the way. And then, of course, the great moments with Ezri and Worf, and he is such a good friend. Like Scott was saying, is it going to make you happy? Then tell him, even though he plays with toys. Which, like Eve was saying about her James, my James and I were talking about that earlier today, and he's just like, oh God, is that us? Because yeah, we don't have toys everywhere. Now it's just both of us that play with toys. That's what happens when you become an adult. You play with toys. I'm sure I'm forgetting plenty of things, but yeah, it's not the best to me of this whole arc, which isn't my favorite thing of the whole series, but it's still a great move forward throughout things episode, and very well written. It's still damn good because, of course, it is DS9. One small note though, the Breen, and Wayun puts this out of, you've read the intelligence reports that their world is bitter cold. Well, actually, it's quite comfortable. So why do they wear the refrigeration suits? And I, like Faith said, I love that we don't see them. We see too much of our sinister things in everything now, especially horror. People want to see the monster. Well, yeah, and then it's gone, and then the mystery is gone. But I've always kind of thought the Breen might be either something deep sea or amphibian, and they require that sort of cold, or the suits are filled with some sort of water, or they're maybe like a kind of algae colony. So as soon as you crack those suits open, you open that faceplate, whoosh, they're all gone. There's nothing. They're like brine shrimp or something, all squished in there in their little cold environment, and that's why they sound all squishy. But just a thought.
Or like the cocoon, but caterpillars become goo inside of the cocoon and still have sentience and memory, and then they become the butterfly. So maybe the suits are the cocoon. I don't know.
To a metamorphosis, they become some other species we do know.
Right.
Okay, we shouldn't give Kurtzman any ideas. We should just shut up right now.
No. When they take their when they take their helmets off, they actually sound a little bit like this, and it's not that.
They got like a Darth Vader helmet on.
Yeah, that's why they need the
Darth
voice
Vader helmet, and they
synthesizer.
turn into Mickey Mouse.
Nobody would be scared of the Breen otherwise.
That'd be so funny.
We're the Breen! Woohoo!
Fire the shots!
All right.
That elongated shape, doesn't it remind you of those the characters in MASH? Mad. What are they called? The Mad Magazine characters. There was the really long.
Spy versus Spy.
That's it. Spy versus Spy.
Oh, right. Oh my
I
God.
always think of that when I see those characters.
Interesting. All right. Most people go Star Wars on them. Sue's nodding her head, and she's got a lot to tell us besides that, and wearing a very cool shirt, by the way.
Yeah.
7th Rule shirt, everybody. Wait, here it comes. There it is.
Yeah.
Check that out. How are you
that
today,
color.
Sue?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. I think this is one of the great episodes of Deep Space Nine. They are so great at taking characters and changing 180 degrees. I sound like a broken record, I realize, from hating a character to actually, I'm not going to say loving, but respecting and liking a character. It's the same with the Ferengi. Even, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but they're so great at that. And this episode had so much going on, and I thought that they handled it perfectly. I made a list, which I'm not going to read, but there are so many little details. I love the friendship now between Ezri and Worf. I love that. I love that they show, I mean, there's war going on and people dying and things getting blowing up, but there's also personal relationships. The one with them playing with, the Alamo. And I think toys are important for everybody, no matter what age. I like, of course, we've commented, I think everybody, on the relationship between Sisko and Cassidy. And I thought that it was totally out of character for Sisko to do that to her. It was one of the first things that I wrote down. And then I thought, well, thank God he came to his senses. I would never let anybody, interfere with my job. That for me would be a deal breaker. So he did the right thing. I love the lines. I love Cassidy's lines. Sisko says to her, you don't cook. And then she says, you wear the apron in the family, which I thought was a great thing to say. Instead of the pants, she's wearing the apron, which is true. I love seeing Damar get a spine and get his confidence back, as they said. And one thing I noticed that I thought was cool at the beginning, when Ezri and Worf get off the ship or whatever it is, she doesn't get a hug from Bashir. She gets one from O'Brien, but not Bashir. I thought, that's interesting. And
that might be the first time he hasn't put his foot in his mouth and done something completely awkward.
Yeah,
Bashir's the kind of guy that goes in for a hug like hips first. Some of the dudes that are like they kind of come at you at an angle with their.
OMG.
He's like left-handed. He stands there with his arms open. I was so worried about you, and she's just like over here in more important land. And he's just like, okay.
It was a very sweet moment, though.
I like the Louise Fletcher's line where she says that Angela is a bad poet, because I'm thinking, oh my God, the guy's such a creep. He is such a creep. And I love, my main thing is seeing Nog on the bridge. He's totally recovered, it seems. I don't know if you ever really recover from something like that, but he's back. And it was just so great to see him do his thing, walking around with absolute confidence, knowing what he's doing. Again, he went from being a thief, stealing stuff literally from the first episode. Now he's on the bridge during a war after suffering from PTSD. And this episode, I think, deserved a 10.
Totally.
And I don't want to hear anybody disagree.
And speaking of walking around on the bridge, Walking Art Made by Melissa has a new home. It's at theintrovertedrepublic.com. Is it The Introverted, or what is it? Or is it? Okay.
It is theintrovertedrepublic.com. Yes.
Everybody go check that out for all of Melissa's fine wares, like the cool Ferengi shirt you see her wearing.
It's not there yet, but eventually it'll be on there. Yeah.
We're just about out of time, but Cirroc, do we have any final thoughts today before we go?
I got a couple of quick points. Number one, when the image that's behind Melissa of San Francisco, it reminds me very closely of a bridge that I saw in the Ukraine that was turned over. So it was eerily similar to some of the images that we're seeing now. Just wanted to highlight that. The other thing that I thought was interesting is when Neil, you were making the point of us kind of rooting for Damar at this point. It reminded me, I made a parallel of World War II and how the Dominion War is playing out, and how Russia was eventually switched sides and joined the Allied forces against the Nazis. And that made us root for Stalin at that time. So Joseph Stalin was essentially the Damar of the World War II.
Good knowledge.
Because America and the Allied forces, as well, as well as Churchill, they were having to essentially, embrace him as part of their alliance. And even though they didn't like the things he was doing with communism, they also had to kind of accept it because they needed the military might of Russia at that time. So I think of Damar in that kind of Joseph Stalin way. And then the last point I would make is I noticed how Ducat, as this Bajoran character, is not he's using this kind of trickery to make her do it. Like, you have to do it, right? He's not using force to beat her over the head and say, open the book and do this or do that. He's kind of using this convincing way. And it reminds me of an old Ethiopian kind of saying in which they say that the devil has to be invited into your home. That you have to be, you have to willingly be a participant into it. It's not like you can just, be forced to do some evil thing. You have to be charmed and tricked into it. And I feel like that's what he's doing with Kai in this situation. He's very, very conscious not to upset her or to piss her off and make, he's very conscious that she has to be a willing participant just to choose this path for herself and for Bajor. So I thought that's a very interesting parallel to the kind of Ethiopian saying that we have about evil and the devil. So those are my little 2 cents.
Mm-hmm. Well, everybody, speaking of Stalin, we've waited long enough and we've got to close the book on this episode. We loved this episode. It was a lot of fun. I feel like there's still so much to talk about, but we could talk about it more in the Discord group a little later. Until then, we want to say thank you to Dr. Susan V. Gruner, to Carrie Schwent, Anil O. Palat, Eve England, out in Wales, Galdu Scott, Jensen, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Faith Howell, Neil Akasaka, Tierney C. Dieckmann, and my live from Tokyo. That's just barely getting ready for breakfast at this point. We'll see you all next time. For myself, Cirroc, Lofton, Malissa Longo, and Aaron Eisenberg. See you soon. Until then, always remember the 7th rule. I almost messed up. Do that maybe next time.